They say baby loves company.
Okay, so just as a little background, the church building was built in 1928 after our first building was blown down by a tornado. It was built in 1928, but these glass windows were not part of the construction. They were added in 1957-58, and you'll see people dedicated the windows. They provided the funds for individual windows. Some of them just have one panel. This one, Arthur Hansen was a big deal. He was the church president, and he ran all kinds of committees. He was very, very active back in the 40s and 50s. In fact, he lived across the street from me on Columbia Avenue in Palisades Park. But I didn't know he was in the church then. I only joined here in 1961 when I was 11. So you'll see the names on there. And one panel for years and years had no dedication to it. And I don't know if you knew Bill Bernardi in town. And he and his family were very long-time members of the church. And there was one panel that had no dedication. So he said, gee, could I dedicate it to my family? And so after a contribution to help defray the cost of the lettering and contribution to the church, there's one that says the Bernardi family. And that was only done about 20 years ago. All the rest were done in the 50s when they were originally installed. And the pastor who was here at the time was Reverend McPherson. And he was just at the end of his term here. He was about to retire, and they were installed just before Christmas. And he had the lights stay on in the church throughout the Christmas season so that everybody could see the windows over Christmas. So we keep the tradition. We only do it on Christmas Eve, though, because, it's expensive. But on Christmas Eve, the lights are lit all night long in the sanctuary. So as you come by into Christmas morning, you can see our windows, and we're very proud of them. So let's start. Okay. Now, the large windows, of course, are sequential, and they illustrate the history of Jesus Christ's life. There are smaller windows in the bottom, and there's another one back there that pictures some of Christ's parables and other events in his life. But this one, obviously, is the beginning. It's the Nativity. Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus in a manger, in a stable. And according to Luke 2:16, they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. So we're all very familiar with the Christmas scene, of course. The second one is Mary, Jesus, and Joseph at home. And this is at home in Nazareth. Now, if you know your Bible stories, right after Jesus' birth, they were warned to flee to Egypt because King Herod wanted to kill baby Jesus. So the family fled to Egypt, and they were there for several years, some say up to 8 years. But then Herod died, the threat was over, and they came back and they went to Nazareth, because the prophecy said that Christ would be a Nazarene. And when they settled in Nazareth, that made him a Nazarene. But that's Mary, Joseph, and Jesus in their home. So, and then you'll see down below the symbol for Christ and the white, come on, what's it's not a poppy, no. Anyway, they're both symbols for Christ. So sorry. I don't know everything here. All right, let's move to the next one. And here we are. Now, the Jews made a pilgrimage every year to Jerusalem. And there were holidays and festivals, and it was a big deal. And I guess it was like the Muslims go to Mecca. and the Jews would go to Jerusalem. But they were there for several days, and they were in a big family group. So Jesus was with his parents and his siblings and aunts, uncles, whatever. And then they all headed back, and at one point, Mary noticed that Jesus wasn't with them. So she and Joseph turned back to look for him, and it took 3 days for them to find him. And you know, he was a little kid at the time. They must have been frantic. And they found him in the temple, and he was among the teachers, and he was asking questions, and they were all mystified at how bright he was, how much he knew, how much he had the Spirit of God in him. So that is Mary and Joseph on the side with Jesus in the middle, and he was actually teaching the elders in the church. Okay, next panel is Jesus being baptized by his cousin, John the Baptist. Mark 1:9. At that time, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw a heaven being torn open and a spirit descending on him like a dove. And there's the dove right below it. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." So that is the very beginning of Jesus' ministry. He was baptized by John the Baptist at the age of 30. Oh, and if you're curious, the distance where they went from Nazareth to Jerusalem is 64 miles. I looked it up. Because who knew? That's a long walk. Okay. Jesus is just beginning his ministry. He's calling people to help him. And the first two he calls are Simon Peter and his brother Andrew. They were fishermen. Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee. He saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake. The Sea of Galilee was often called a lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I will send you out to fish for people." So those are the first two. The others, if you're interested, are James and John, who were the sons of Zebedee, and Jesus called them the sons of thunder, which I guess meant they were loud. I don't know. And Matthew, who was a tax collector, Thomas, Philip, Bartholomew, Simon the Canaan, James the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, and Judas Iscariot. That was the 12. All right, the next frame shows Jesus and his friend Lazarus. Jesus had three friends, two sisters and a brother, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, and he would periodically visit them. And the one time when he came, the women were crying because Lazarus had died 4 days earlier. And they said, "Well, move the stone away from the tomb." And they said, "No, he's been in there for 4 days." They said, "Move the stone." And he did, and he stood outside and called, "Lazarus, come out." And he did, and that's one of Jesus' first miracles. So, of course, the first one is turning the water into wine, and we don't have that pictured here, but this was a good one too. Oh, Reverend McPherson, who was the one who got us our windows, is here. He has this dedication to the church members. Okay. Now this panel shows Jesus walking on water. It's another one of his miracles. The disciples were in a boat on their way to Capernaum, and Jesus wasn't with them. And then it was just dawning, and they saw a figure coming across, and they thought it was a ghost. It was Jesus coming to them. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." And as they tried to get him into the boat, they hit the shore. They had gotten across. I smell the charcoal starting. Okay. The next window is Jesus with the little children. Now, Jesus was teaching, preaching to a group of people, and women were coming up with their children asking Jesus to bless them. And the disciples kept chasing the women away. They said, "No, he's busy, he's got more important things to do." And of course, Jesus heard that, and his famous line, which is Sunday schools always sing it, "Let the little children come unto me." So, do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. The children are the future. Jesus knew that, and he welcomed the children to him, and he welcomed the women too. Okay, now here we have double panels, and these are some of the parables. The first one is the parable of the prodigal son. Where did I? Oh, here we go. Okay. All right, I'm sure you know this. The one son stayed behind and helped his father, and the other son, as soon as he was able to get his money, took off and partied and had a good time and wasn't heard for years and years. The father didn't know if he was dead or alive. And then one day he comes back crawling to the kitchen door looking for scraps to eat. And he had run out of money, he had run out of friends, and he just wanted little scraps of food. But the father said, no, you're my son, you were dead, you're alive. And he welcomed him, and of course the famous line was they killed the fatted calf for him that day, because you can always go home. This is where you belong. Next one is, this is the Sermon on the Mount. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him and he began to teach them. And this is where he gives the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the merciful, blessed are the pure in heart, blessed are those who have hunger and thirst for righteousness' sake, blessed are those who are persecuted. So that's the shortened version of them, but that's when he gave us the Beatitudes. Now the next one, okay, yes. Oh, this is the parable of the rich man. And he came to Jesus and asked, "How do I get into heaven? What should I do?" And Jesus says, "Well, follow the commandments." He said, I do. I follow the commandments. What else must I do? He says, "Give away everything you have and give the money to the poor." And he walked away because he knew he couldn't do that. He could keep the commandments, but he couldn't give up his riches. Okay, on the lower one, this actually, I suppose, is part of the continuing story here, because this is Palm Sunday. Jesus had become very popular among the masses. And he had a lot of followers, and they found out he was going to be coming into Jerusalem. So they readied a path for him, and they spread palm leaves on the ground. And Jesus had the disciples get him a colt or a donkey. It's not clear exactly which it was. But the people welcomed him into Jerusalem, and he was like top dog that day, but of course things turned very quickly after that. But that is the scene of Palm Sunday. The next one, of course, is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. He went up with Peter, James, and John. He said, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He was sorrowful and troubled, and he said, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." He went a little further up and he began praying, and then he came back and all three of them were asleep. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you do not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." So, they did their best, I'm sure, but these were humans who were following him, and try as you might sometimes, you just can't keep awake. Whoops, did I do that? Yes, I did. Thanks. Okay. Now this one is the last one on the bottom. That is the Last Supper. Okay. No, that is not. That is Jesus eating with Matthew, who was one of his disciples, who was a tax collector. And while he was there, other friends of Matthew's came in, and there were sinners among them, and there were other tax collectors among them. And the Pharisees saw this. They asked his disciples, "Does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Well, yeah, because Jesus loved everyone. And see, that's the panel that was dedicated to the Bernardi family. So Bill was a very active member here, right up until he was gone. Okay. Hi, Krabby. It's here. Oh, this is the Transfiguration with Jesus, with Moses, and Elijah. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. Of course, Moses and Elijah are two of the biggest prophets of the Old Testament, and they were the ones who foretold Jesus' coming. Window 10. This is the Last Supper, and you see Judas on Jesus' left. While they were reclining at the table eating, he said, "Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." And of course, they all said, "Is it I? Is it I?" They were all perplexed. Who would betray Jesus? "Surely you don't mean me." "It is one of the 12, he replied, "one who dips bread into the bowl with me." And of course, at that moment, both Jesus and Judas dipped their bread into the bowl of wine. Now we've got the crucifixion. Okay, near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, and Mary Magdalene. They're not all pictured here, but the three Marys were at the foot of the cross, and they were there until Jesus died and was taken down from the cross. But it was his mother's sister, so his aunt, and Mary Magdalene, who was who was a disciple of Jesus and followed around with the other disciples. And then, of course, we have the resurrection. And we all know who the first person to see Jesus alive was. It was Mary Magdalene. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you were looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. And then she went and told the other disciples. And that's the story. There's one more panel here, which is out of sequence, of course. This one, we're not quite sure, but we think perhaps this is Jesus with Zacchaeus and his family. Zacchaeus heard Jesus was coming to town, so he climbed a tree because the crowd was so dense he couldn't get up close. So he climbed a tree, and Jesus saw him up there, and he says, "Zacchaeus, come down. I'm going to your house." And he went to Zacchaeus' house, and they had a meal together, and his family welcomed him gladly. So then our very last window is the rose window. Now this was part of the original build. And however, as you see, it's just glass covered or painted over, and it's over the almost 100 years it's been peeling away. So it's not the beautiful glass of our stained glass, but the rose in tradition represents Mary. And that is the end of my talk. Any questions?
I do, but I don't know if you're going to have an answer.
Well, I'll try.
I see these windows are set up differently than the other windows.
Yes, yeah.
That one's kind of off by itself.
Yeah.
Is that a structural issue, or is there
I am not sure. I really don't know. I know what, I don't know. I don't know if there was a window there because, of course, the extension wasn't there then. So there may have been a window there that was moved. I don't know. I haven't seen it in the plans, or maybe these windows were there. I don't know. That's a question, though. I've been going through all of these old records, and I actually found the blueprints for when the addition was built. I found the blueprints for the church, and I realized pretty early on that there was a time capsule in the fellowship hall, and then just a week or so ago, I realized there's also a time capsule in the cornerstone of the sanctuary here. And of course that's 95 years ago that was put in. So I'm not sure how we're going to get to it because that's a really nice cornerstone. And some people were upset when this cornerstone was open, so we'll just have to play it by ear. But I mean, it's right in the plans for a copper box to be put in there. So there's got to be something in there. Well, that's it. We don't want to wait until it comes down.
Put them in, are all gone, and no one.
Right. That's why you gotta open them up while there are people who will appreciate it. So we say, well, it's 61 years. It's the 100th anniversary. It's time to open this. And then we found there's another one. So I really want to get to that one too. That one could be, well, it could all be dust at this point, but who knows? We'll see. We won't know till we open it,
I
so.
know what you're saying, you don't want to damage the cornerstone.
No, no.
Same situation was at the firehouse, on Broad Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Many was there many years, and then all of a sudden talk came about time capsule, and what are we talking about? Some of the younger guys said, one of the older members said that it's a time capsule on the cornerstone. So, and we're not sure if that's accurate or not.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to be careful, you don't want to just damage.
You have to go look in the old minutes, you know? So, yeah, you know, why leave it to the wrecking ball to discover it? Because what's the point then? There's nobody that's going to appreciate it. It's just going to go into the dumpster. So thank you.
Thank you.